Welcome back. Now, what I'm going to do in this section, in this part, is try to make the transition from what I consider to be personal, which is ethics, to what I consider to be company, which is social responsibility. The textbook, the Jones book, is a good book, but it tries to assign ethics to companies, and I honestly don't think when you think of companies, you should think about them being ethical or not ethical. When it comes to companies, we use the term social responsibility, okay? So the videos up until now, really, you should be thinking about how these ethics apply to your life, not so much about companies. I'm going to now make the transition to companies, and again, when I talk about social responsibility, corporate social responsibility, I'm talking about this is what ethics is for companies, okay? Because companies are not human beings. So the way a company will approach something is going to be different than how a human being approaches something. So the first couple videos, ethics for human beings. Now we're making the transition to companies, and the next video will be purely about corporate social responsibility. Okay. Now, from the last video I talked about ethical decision making, and now the book tries to make this transition to looking at what is ethical and unethical. I think we talked about that enough. But then the book tries to tie this to companies, and so that's what I'm now going to do. Okay. The importance of trust and reputation. Every company wants people to trust them, just as you want people to trust you. And you know that people's trust in you and your reputation is, that's important. Companies do too. And so good companies want customers to trust them, want the employees to trust them, want all the stakeholders to have faith in them. Good companies want a good reputation. Think about this a couple of years ago. A couple of years ago, Samsung came out with a phone that, quite honestly, I don't remember which one it was. But they came out with a phone that the batteries would occasionally overheat and sometimes even catch on fire. It's not a good thing if you're selling cell phones and the phones catch on fire. Because Samsung had developed such a good reputation, because people had trust in Samsung, when they came out with the next phone after it, people were willing to buy it because they realized that the mistake Samsung made was a mistake. It's sad, but Samsung did the right thing. They pulled all those phones back in and they replaced them, and so customers were able to keep the reputation and trust of Samsung, and so as far as I know, the sales of their phones have not been hurt by that action. If Samsung had treated it differently, if Samsung had not handled it correctly, then people wouldn't be willing to buy Samsung phones anymore. So trust and reputation are really important, and if a company does it wrong, then they're going to lose customers, they're going to lose sales. It's really as simple as that. So, trust and reputation. The book looks at where we get our ethical structures in life, and it takes a look at societal ethics, individual ethics, organizational ethics, and occupational ethics. And if you tie them all together, that is what is business ethics. Societal ethics is what is it as a society that we believe in? What are the values of society? What do we consider to be fair? What do we not consider to be fair? And it talks about people behave in certain ways because they've internalized certain values, beliefs, and norms. What that means is that within a society, you develop what you consider to be good. It's that simple. And so Societal ethics is looking at what do we consider to be good. Occupational ethics. So many of you in this class are going to be studying accounting, finance, supply chain, marketing, all of these majors, and I'm willing to bet even those of you in tourism and other majors, most every field of work has its own ethics within that occupation, within that group. So, you know, accountants have a code of ethics. So does finance. Every group comes up with this is what is ethical and this is what is not. Book talks about individual ethics. That your individual ethics is your ethics, you as an individual. And it's important that companies hire people who have individual ethics, that they do, you want to hire people who are ethical. The overall organizational ethics. Some organizations are just natural, some organizations put an emphasis on ethics much higher than other organizations. And, you know, this is where leadership really matters. So on this one, I'm just going to say for those of you who own Apple products, this is where Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, is a very ethical man. If you read about his life story, he's just unquestionably an ethical man. And so he's an example of trying to do his best to make Apple an ethical company. Now, I actually want to do a whole video on the good and bad of Apple, because Apple is, you know, I own a lot of Apple products, but there's a good argument that Apple is not as ethical as they'd like to think they are, okay? But anyhow, organizational ethics. I have faith in Apple and Samsung. They're competing companies, but I believe both companies want to do right by their consumers. They want to do what is best for the people who buy their products. That's a good thing. Not all companies believe that. And that brings me to where I'm going to close this part in saying that this now brings us to the term social responsibility. Basically, social responsibility is ethics for companies. And in the next video, I'm going to be showing you the 4 different types of levels of corporate social responsibility. And that's it for this. I thank you for paying attention.